And now we iron based metallic conversion, and it rusts is brown or orangish color, but the magnesium tarnishes and becomes shades of blue and green, right? So we don't remember that. That's why that racism shit works so well. A lot of them people was being turned blue, where you get your Smurf story from, in the Appalachian Mountains with the silver water for sunscreen. But we don't know the culture of the land, and we don't know how we used to treat conditions of the foreigners that came. So if you don't know what we used to do, you don't know what is these stories telling you. They telling us the history, but they ain't telling us in the history class. They telling us in arts and entertainment. They telling us in the music. Right? Because they know we not going to trust the politicians. They already know this, because they all slime balls, puppets. And all of them is controlled from somewhere else. Somebody else control every politician in on the land. Now, the only place where you get where the people actually have control is what you call grassroots politics. That means your local government, your city council, your mayor, your sheriff. That's it. Police don't supposed to be here. They slave catchers. The sheriff is supposed to be elected from among the people, with the one with the most skills to be able to maintain order on the land with the least amount of resistance. The more skilled that the person is, the more likely he is to get elected as sheriff or sharif. Right? The birthright heir sharif on the land is Peastone Chief Malik Angel Bay. He is the blood right heir to enforce the rules of the mother's house, the Red House. And the rules of the Red House is how to regulate the land. That's his job, what he was born to do. He was held incapacitated as a bond servant by the corporate entity called the United States under a doctrine of COINTELPRO tied to a sub-doctrine called Readiness Exercise 1984. And the wall is the trigger to tell you how to activate it. And the wall is 45, right? That Desert Eagle. And the 45 is Trump. Trump sounds the trumpet, right? To let you know that the law had to be restored on the land in order to put the lawman back on the land. So first they have to tear down the corporation, remove the admiralty jurisdiction, go to the jurisdiction of the republic. Then they have to flip from the peacetime seal to the wartime seal, because the peacetime seal is really a fraud time seal. The fraud is the illusion of peace while we ain't never not been at war. Ever since these people came over here, there's not a 20-year stretch where there's not a major war going on that they got their nose in. They got their nose in every hog killing come up, and we taking the credit for it because we not stepping up and saying enough is enough. You ain't got to do no marching. Divorce yourself from the system. But you got to do it in mass. Everybody got to participate that know who they are. The ones who don't know who they are, you can't expect them to be no good for nothing, no way. They already confused, lost in the sauce. Right? So we got all of the mental power and prowess to restore everything on the land. We have the leaderships and the councils of elders capable of giving us wise advice to overcome the opposition before us, but we first got to take them back from the invaders who's squatting on the land, masquerading as our government and as our law and law enforcement. None of them got nothing to do with us. All of them are foreign agents representing the foreign body politic under the power, auspices, authority, and jurisdiction of the Vatican and the Crown of England. The other ones lost their right. The French, the Spanish, they lost their rights in this war for America a long time ago. But believe me, they came first as gentry, right? When you go look and you look at the garb of the ones who claim to have purchased Manhattan for trinkets, they was wearing knickerbockers. You can't never forget that, because knickerbockers is a form or article of clothing that's not from over here. We never wore knickerbockers. We didn't wear buckle shoes. We wore moccasins, we wore leather bottom shoes, but they wasn't those box shoes with that big ass belt buckle on them either. That was European. So go back and look at the seals of New York, the seals of each one of the boroughs, and it'll tell you that you were being deceived into believing that you lost your land when you can't lose your land as long as you live on it. Shout out ODB, Old Dirty Bastard, Chief Crazy Horse, the baddest to ever do it. Shout out to the big Christopher Wallace, notorious sitting bull, sitting on his post. Took that public lashing like a man. Shouldn't have never let the enemy come in. Shout out to Tupac Amaru, motherfucker, ride or die. Da 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 da. For publicly lashing the chief that sat on the post while the rest of the chiefs was being blindsided and subjugated. Shout out to Raekwon the chief, a.k.a. Raekwon the chef. Shout out to the killer priest. Keep on killing them with the knowledge of self. You know what I'm saying? All these chiefs involved in this shit, we ain't all part of the same motherfucking clan, but we all part of the same motherfucking land. And when we realize that the enemy is just trying to get us convinced that we don't belong on our own land, all we got to do is stand together like the band of the hand. You dig? Now that's a black power fist for you. Knock your motherfucking ass straight. Yeah. So look, go back to the Harriet Tubman story. There's a famous quote from Harriet Tubman, and I want y'all to analyze this for a minute. She said, I could have saved more slaves had they known they were slaves. Let that marinate for a minute. Go back to what we said earlier about the heirs' property in the heritable lands, right? And then remember what she said. If they knew they were slaves, I could have saved more of them. They didn't know they were slaves. What did they think they were if they didn't think they were slaves? Right? What did they think they were? Did they think they was, what? They thought they was in Brazil? What they thought they were, what they was doing at that place they called the plantation? Right? Think about that for a minute. She could have saved more slaves had they known they were slaves. Listen, when you go back and read, now remember, they wasn't allowed to teach us to read or write. They wasn't allowed to sell us any property. They not allowed to do banking with us. They robbing Big Mama banks as outlaws to shut them down. And we had the largest heirs property out of any other ethnic group on the land, and they don't know they slaves. Remember that part. Now, remember, before it was called the Big House, it was called Big Mama House, and it was the family farm and the family headquarters. So she's going to save somebody from being a slave from their family farm that's been infiltrated. But that's why they don't know they slaves. They don't know they slaves because they living on their heirs' land, and their heirs' land is being ran by a foreigner. I could have saved more of them had they known they were slaves. They wasn't slaves. A prisoner of war, they were enslaved, and being a slave is not the same thing. Being captured as the spoils of war and being a slave is not the same thing. if you don't never stop fighting. Okay, now reclassification comes in, right? Everything is handed down on the land through the mother's line. The heritable heirs' rights comes through the mother's line of heritability, right? This is why they want you to tie to a nationality, because you tie into your status as black in law or civilly mortis as a national, because they saying that the Plymouth wreck caused all of the ships that was docked across the land, so to speak, which was the sea to shiny sea concept of the song. The sea to shiny sea was the expanse of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction over the land to connect the Atlantic and Pacific boundary lines and tie them together. We ain't paying attention. We just think we is. And then if some crazy nigga like Rod Hayes come along and say, have y'all noticed this and gave it any thought? Let's examine this for a minute. All of the tribes over here, the male chiefs protected the clan, and the female chiefs gave him the criteria by which they knew that they need to be protected, right? So if we didn't have a matriarchal council to see what was morally repugnant to us as a collective, then the chief had to figure it out on his own. We at war. Everybody got a piece. Everybody got a position. Everybody have to play their part in order for all of us to win as a collective. This is how you get one tribe marching the totem pole across the land, well, several tribes posting that to reclaim D.C. in 2017. Then you have me giving them in 2019 public notices to cancel the contracts for treaty contracts for fraud and non-performance. Then you got Empress Redbird receiving the paperwork to verify that my part was done, tying me and her together in this struggle. Then you got Sipico, who put the Pope on public notice about the no longer following Vatican rule, going back to the Great Law. The Pope gives her a response by repealing the discovery doctrine, which is the foundational instrument of the slave system. Then we had the J16 committee, the shaman, one of the chiefs from the land, sent in the ceremonial shaman to occupy the Pelosi seat with a Republic flag behind the Admiralty flag in order for the Republic to seize it back from the water. Now it's back to the jurisdiction of the land, right? So you got a whole bunch of different tribes. You got the ceremonial Muskogee Creek under the direction of the Muskogee Creek, the Washita, and a few other clans, serving public notice on Atlanta and Cop City and the surrounding area. See, we be forgetting about that stuff, but we so busy trying to tell people who got rights to the land that we are stepping on allies in reckless behavior, right? We ain't worried about the allies. We worried about the enemies. We worried about the ones that's been infiltrating us, turning us against each other from the inside out. If you tear down a house divided, can't stand, right? So stop fighting them people. They came here to give you aid and assistance, and you can tell by how impoverished their reservation was. If they don't have no casinos, they did not take sides with the enemy. Telling you that now. If they don't got casinos and they ain't getting no fat ass check from the government without having to work, they did not take sides with the enemy. Stop fighting them. Stop fighting them. That's the wrong fight. The ones who took sides with the enemy, that like to drive in their $250,000 cars wearing their $1,800 suits with their $5,000 gator skin shoes on, that live in upstate gated communities off the res, them the ones you need to be worried about. They ain't worried because they know that when you figure it out, you're going to attack the ones that look like them that came to help us. All of them didn't come to help, and all of them didn't come to hurt. It's two sides to this, the righteous and the unrighteous. Look at how the government treat the tribe, and you will know if the government have any respect for them or if they made an allegiance with us. This is why you had them all in Seminole Wars. They keep trying to tell y'all that we was the runaway slaves that joined the Seminole Resistance. No, we wasn't. We was old Mississippian chiefs. We was old Alibaba chiefs from Alabama. We was Razorback chiefs coming in to fight this war and run these mucks off the land. And we ran into a situation where we was losing too many casualties on both sides. Ceasefire, conjure war, who gonna educate themselves above the condition, or who gonna allow themselves to be drowned in the dogma of the false doctrines. That's it. This is just that simple. Stop with the divide and conquer. We had the Irish Republic Army. We was sending them support over there to overthrow motherfuckers too. And they was sending us support over here when we was fighting England. They was fighting them too. The Irish has been one of the biggest allies to the tribes over here. And this is why they had free run of the Appalachians. That's where they wanted to set up their tribal camps. And now we treating them like they didn't fight on our behalf because the enemy got us thinking anybody that ain't dark as me or darker is the enemy, and nothing can be further for the truth. Look, Chief Warhorse darker than me, but my hair is nappy. Hers is straight, naturally. I got a nephew that got naturally straight hair, and he's chocolate, darker than me. My brother over me got curly hair.
And throughout Central and South America. So, you know, having an understanding of someone's genetic makeup, like you said, being able to study and know how different groups react to certain kind of social ideology or type of control systems helps, because you can control them. If you can't control them from the outer perimeters, you can control them from the inner.
The most functional, you ever see Drink Champs?
What is it? Oh, yeah.
You know, that's an ancient cultural phenomenon. When we went from, we used to use the peace pipe and the herb,
yes.
But when the settlers came, we started using alcohol in negotiations so we can find out what they really want.
Yes, I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah, so the Drink Champs was the retread of the powwow circle when we smoked the herb, because you can't sit there and smoke herb with somebody and then they sit there and tell you a bald-faced lie without knowing they lying.
That's right.
Right, but they say a drunk man speak what?
The truth.
A sober man.
Sober mind, yes.
Right, so they say if you want the truth, listen to babies and drunk folks.
That is so true. You'll always get the truth from the young and the old, right? And
the
you know,
young and the drunk.
Too. I know we're engaging with the nicotine, which has a connection to their indigenous roots, is stop the very thing that was able to, you know, control the bioweapon.
It's the receptors in the brain. So you know what a nootropic is, right?
Yes.
Nicotine is a nootropic. And they know this. This is why they start poisoning tobacco.
That's right. With 50 million chemicals when you get but cigar smokers, it tends to have less, right? Isn't that true? It has less. No?
It depends on who grow it. If it's growing through R.J. Reynolds or any of those major tobacco companies, they dust them with the uranium, plutonium, and all that BS.
That's why why did they ban the Cuban cigars? Is that why they banned them? Because they're more pure?
No, the Cuban cigars was banned for economic reasons. They was trying to strangle the economics of Cuba totally.
Okay. Strong.
It wasn't just the Cuban cigars. Remember, Cuba was a primary exporter of sugar and pineapples.
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yeah.
they, all of that was stopped under the embargo. They just now started relaxing the embargoes on Cuba in the 2000s. They've been under embargo since the 50s.
Yeah. And they still
That's
have,
why when you look like you go in a time warp when you go to Cuba.
oh yeah, it's amazing. People, it's a beautiful place to visit. And my grandmother actually was there. My mother's mother lived there for like 15, 12 to 15 years. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful place, you know. It's a
Yeah.
communist country. People don't realize it, you know, they control the food, the distribution of the food, but the culture is still very, you know, very intact, you know.
That became a necessary part of government to control the food because when the embargoes was put on them, you got to remember when Castro and Camilo and Che Guevara took over Cuba, they took a lot of stuff from American mafiosos. One of the retaliatory things they did was burn crops.
Hmm. As a way to control the ability to be able to export it or import it or utilize it for their people.
Well, what they was trying to do is starve out the army, which is made up of the people in the grassroots.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they wanted to, they said, anybody know about guerrilla resistance around the world for the last 80 years? It's a term they use, beans and bullets. That means feed the people and protect the people. If you want to interrupt that, you have to interrupt either the firearm supply or you had to interrupt the food supply.
Hmm.
So like with Castro, one of the first things he did was seize the armories of the government so
Oh.
that they could have the weaponry to fight back.
Hmm.
And they was raiding government um, auxiliaries that housed the firearms to arm the soldiers to fight the resistance.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So um, the when they realized they got enough guns to fight us, so when they leave, okay, well, what's the next thing? Get rid of the food. So they was burning crops.
Hmm.
You know,
Kind of like what they're doing to us now.
now they getting rid of GMOs.
You think that's what it is? They're getting rid of all
They have to. They
yeah,
can't give it back to us with toxic food.
it's true. So you're,
So
yeah,
for the last 3 years, you can look up chicken farms that done caught fire,
yeah, all the,
um,
yeah,
slaughterhouses that done caught fire.
silos that were taken
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah. All of these different stuff. So the farmer, it got two options. Government been subsidizing GMO foods, steroid-based foods, toxic foods.
Hmm.
Now, if you want to make money as a farmer, this stuff is no longer going to be permissible. You got two options. If you just stop farming and let it die off, you're going to go broke.
Absolutely.
But you got another option. You've been paying insurance for 80 years.
What?
You've been paying insurance for 80 years. Why not collect?
Oh, stop.
Not
Oh,
only that, you got to remember, FDIC is trying to patch all of the places the BRICS is forcing the US
oh
dollar out
yeah,
of.
absolutely. You heard of,
So
yeah.
their insurance company is leaking bad. That's why they keep coming up with this 250 billion missing here and a
Hmm.
100 billion. That's because they can't collect on the interest, or we call it inflation.
Hmm.
They can't collect on the inflation of the dollar when it's being forced back home and nobody's using it. The dollar is contingent upon circulation.
That's right. That's
This
what
is
they
what,
were stimulating. They were stimulating the economy. Yeah.
yeah. And so what do they do to stimulate the economy? They give out massive grants.
Yes.
They give out massive grants, but we normally didn't get the grants.
No, no.
When they created something called the United Nations, then they found out that they can create super grants if
Mm.
they gave it to foreign interests.
Entities, yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is why you see every time something happened over here, they give Ukraine a whole bunch of money under the Biden administration.
Hmm.
They're circulating the dollar, trying to artificially float the system.
Interesting. And that's why also like when you in South America, you'll notice like in Ecuador, in Panama's starting to do it. Also, Argentina's starting to want to do it. They're starting to save the dollar. Like if you go and do your, it's called the blue exchange, you'll go and you'll give them they just want American dollars and they're stocking it. They're holding it in Argentina. They're just holding it because they want to use that currency.
Well, we gotta remember, Argentina will be all right if America stay out their business.
It's true.
They leverage was stockpiling the US dollar, the fiat.
Hmm. Hmm.
It stagnates the growth of the money because it has to circulate.
Yes. Yes.
If if you stockpiling it, you run it into it's like digging a hole and the hole is so deep that no matter how much water you put in it, you never fill it up.
Interesting.
They digging a hole for the dollar.
Yeah.
They burying the dollar by
Yeah.
holding it. It's
Yeah.
like they holding us in reprisal for the debt, so they holding the U.S. dollar in reprisal for exploitation of their people.
Oh,
It's the
interesting.
same thing. It's just
Yeah.
it's a counterbalance.
Yeah. And did you hear what happened with China? China just made a big deal with Brazil, which is basically going to initiate a new bartering system. Um, that kind of puts the brick back on the table. I don't know that it'll happen, but they just made a big deal.
So the thing now is how are they going to do what they call international exchange of currency
Mhm.
if everybody's back to it's a one-to-one value everywhere you go? So they're trying to look at the stability of the economy so that when they set exchange rate, it should come out in the end a fair exchange,
Yeah.
equivalent exchange, not a superior or inferior.
Yeah, because $1 of US is about right now it's like 5.6 reais in Brazil. Yeah. So they're
They,
trying to
that mean
even, yeah.
that mean they dollar is effed up.
Oh, it is. Like it's wonderful when you're here, but it's really terrible for them. It's not fair. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. So let's kind of turn the topic of discussion to what's happening. I don't watch Super Bowls, monkey balls, you know what I mean? Balls and mass destruction. Everybody wanted to watch the Super Bowls, but Kendrick Lamar did
Mhm.
a performance and I usually don't watch it the night of the Super Bowl because I don't want to get entranced by the socially engineered mind control programming. But I did get a chance to watch with the Zombies last night or today rather, and I found it really fascinating. The things that he did during the Super Bowl, the imagery of the PlayStation with the X, and I'm going to ask you some questions because we came upon something like 4 a.m. with the Zombies. He had the X, the triangle, and the O. He had the PlayStation, because this is the game of the matrix, looking like a man, bleached skin. Did you not know that bleaching should be illegal? Come on now. Like Mr. Serena, I don't know if her ball, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rod. Let me pull back. Let me pull back. Okay, I'm gonna behave myself. Okay. Okay, let's go to the performance. What do you think about the performance, Rod? Like, I thought it was really ritualistic. The words he was saying, I mean, I'm a big hip hop fan, but his verbiage was powerful. But there was some mind control programming in there. Can I get a little bit of a breakdown of what you perceive that ritualistic performance was
Well,
about?
first thing I gotta tell you is I didn't watch it. See, I still haven't watched it.
See, you're like me. Yeah, I didn't watch
I
it.
still haven't watched it.
Yeah.
The second thing is that the code didn't come out in the outcome of the game. It came out in the outcome of the performance.
What do you
And we
mean?
was expecting the Chiefs to win.
I wasn't because I didn't expect them to win because we found out that the Eagles was the year it was founded, the Eagles is a snake and that the Hawks were a pig and it's the enemy year of the pig. So I kind of presume that a snake team would win. So Philly, we kind of discussed it before it happened, so I assume Philly might win.
Yeah, well, most of us because we've been watching the Chiefs, right? I was hoping that this would be the years for the Lions finally, but it turned out once they was done, because they represent the kings of the north,
Oh, okay.
right? The lion symbolism is the king,
Hmm.
right? The bear symbolism is the nomad. You know, you know, you don't F with them people over there. Stand out here in the woods by itself. The symbolism for the eagle is also the symbolism of a high chief.
Yes.
My conflict came in is when I was looking at chiefs on both sides of the game,
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they're both
right? So,
chiefs. Yeah.
and the obvious thing is to go with the one that actually called them chiefs in the name, but we didn't call them chiefs. That's an exonym.
That's what they call them. That's not an H.
Every, right. So our tribes, for their tribal leader, had a different term that represent a leader.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, in the Washita, theirs was called Miku,
Mm.
right? And sometimes they name is enough to designate who they are because everybody in the tribe know them. And then they would, like, for instance, we use the term Sonny. Sonny is he born to be a chief, especially if he wasn't born named Sonny and he picked that name up. Everybody start calling him Sonny,
Yeah.
Sonny Boy, Son Son.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was
Imbuing
born to
that
be a chief.
energy. Yeah,
He was,
he's imbuing that energy. Yeah,
yeah. Now you got to do is look his birth date up and check the stellar alignments, and you will know what type of chief he is, what
that's
he
right.
came to do,
That's right.
what they call
Mhm.
your astrological chart. So the astronomy and astrology go together in order to read the numbers on the ground,
Absolutely. I found it really
right?
interesting like, with the game was symbolic, but I want you to see it. I'm gonna wait until you get a chance to see it so we can.
Let's do a little background on Kendrick. You see him standing on his car,
The
right?
what? The what?
The standing on the car. The car was the name of the album was the same name as the car.
Okay.
He used that car. I think that was his first car.
Okay.
Okay, now we had to go back to at what point do we know Kendrick is one of the Chiefs? If
Well,
you go back about 2020, not long